While I'm here waiting for this rain cloud to go through, I thought I'd give you a little bit of my background. I started keeping bees in 2015, and I started with 2 hives. And when I started, I looked around in the area for somebody to help me with bees and somebody to mentor me, somebody to teach me. And in my area, I wasn't finding anything, and I wasn't finding anybody that could do that. And so I ended up going to the Wasatch Front out in the Salt Lake area, which is for me about a 2.5 hour drive, and took a class out there, and the teachers did a really good job. But they're out there and I'm out here, and the weather's different. Our season tends to be about 2 to 3 weeks behind what they see in Salt Lake. We're higher in elevation by about 1,000 feet, and maybe a little more than that, maybe 1,500 feet. And we're colder, and it's just different out here. We don't get as much moisture as they do. Our bees don't get the cleansing flights in the winter that theirs do. It's different, and it is for every location. That's part of what makes beekeeping local for everybody. But I just wasn't finding anybody to really teach me, and it was frustrating for me. So I started with 2 hives, and like most beekeepers, I really didn't know what I was doing and lost both hives that winter. They didn't make it. But I was hooked by that time, and just really fell in love with beekeeping and keeping bees, and knew I wanted to do something more than just a couple of hives. So the next year, I took another beekeeping class, and a little more advanced class from the same people, and they did a great job. And I went from 2 hives to 20 hives, and I didn't know what I was doing, but somebody should have told me, don't do that. You need to grow a little slower than that. But I didn't know any better, and so I didn't just double my hive count. I 10 timesed it. And for me, it actually worked out. For the next 2 years, I didn't lose a single hive. And what it did was force me to really, really dig in. I read everything I could find, lots of YouTube videos, and I quickly learned that YouTube wasn't really the best source for keeping bees in my area. I learned a lot, but it was really difficult to sift through the good information from the bad, and even then, the good information, did it apply to me and my area and my location and my climate? And that was difficult to sort through. And I think I've finally kind of sorted through most of that. But it was just really frustrating for me as a new beekeeper not to have somebody to help me. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody around me to teach me. And so I just had to learn. It forced me to really dig in, and I did. And now I think I've got a pretty good grasp on what's going on. I certainly don't know everything, but what I didn't want to have happen, as I looked around the area and started talking to people about keeping bees, everybody I ran into had basically the same experience. They'd tried once and they couldn't keep them alive, but again, they didn't have anybody to turn to either. And I decided that needed to change in my area. So I sat down and developed a curriculum, a course for a beginner beekeeper. And I just incorporated all the things that I had learned, and some of the things that I'd learned from the other classes I'd taken, some of the things I'd learned from books and YouTube videos, and some of the things I'd learned from my own experience, what to do, what not to do. Don't go from 2 to 20 hives your second year. That's not the right thing to do. But it worked for me. I don't recommend it for most people. after a couple of years, I started teaching classes. People started asking me questions. And I thought, boy, I don't really have all the answers. I know a little bit, but they started asking me questions. And I decided, you know what, I could put together a beginner course. And so I did. I have people come to it every year. And then I put together an advanced course. I was already raising my own queens, and I was already doing grafting, and my honey production was going up every year and really improving. So I made an advanced course, and part of those courses, I learned pretty quickly that it's one thing to have a classroom lecture on bees. It's something else to get out in the beehive and get your hands in there and really see what's going on. And sometimes for some beekeepers, the hands-on is the best approach. And I think that's really true for most people when it comes to beekeeping. Just, you got to get in and get that experience. So I offer a part of my classes that I do. I teach the class in late February, early March, and that gives the new beekeeper time to gather their equipment, get their bees ordered, and get their equipment here and get it painted and get set up and be ready for the bees. Around here, those usually show up about the end of April, 1st of May, depending on weather. This year they were late. It was more like middle of May for some of the nukes and packages to come in. But anyway, I started doing that, and as part of my class, I decided I needed to offer a field day. So that's what we did today. I have the students come over to my house, and we sit down and we light a smoker, and we do a hive check, and we do several hive checks, and we do a mite wash, and just go through the hive. And sometimes that's all the beekeeper needs, is just to see somebody else do it. It gives them the confidence that, hey, that looked really pretty easy. It's not as difficult for some things as you'd think. It really helps them just to ask questions. And what am I seeing? What's that? Is that drone? Is that a queen? What's what? And I think that having that hands-on approach is helpful. So that's what we did this morning. And this afternoon, I'm just out checking my own bees and going through some of my hives and sitting here waiting for this little rain cloud to pass over. I'm getting wind now, so I think we're just about there. As soon as this wind comes and goes, we'll be there. It'll have gone over, and I can go check these bees and see how they're doing. This hive, just because it was small, what? Is the queen right there?
Red.
She red.
That was fast. These guys.
Yeah, there she is. I've got some queen cups here on the bottom, and I'm going to tear them open just to see if there's something in them. There's nothing in them. They're empty. So they're just practice cups. And you're going to get those queen cups in your hive, especially this time of year. Normal. Nothing to worry about. But I've got capped brood here. That's really nice pattern. Look how solid it is. She's hitting almost every cell. And notice these are a little bit raised. Those are drones, right? I suspect, if I really do have a queen, that right here on the edge of this, I'm seeing eggs and larvae. So what are we seeing? Capped brood right here, larvae on the edges, a little bit of pollen out here further. That's a pretty textbook frame. Here's the other side. So a little bit of drone brood right here, that's fine. Mostly capped worker brood. Some larvae on the edge. Again, I've got some queen cups here. There's nothing in them. And I'm going to keep looking. I suspect my queen's down in the next box down, but a lot of people get confused because they see this one and this one and this one and this one, and they think there's my queen. No, these are drones. So that's a drone. He can't hurt you. So he has no stinger. He cannot hurt you. So if you want to mark a drone, you can certainly mark a drone. Let's find a drone here. Oh, it's hard to pick them up with gloves on and get them. So here's my drone, and the way you mark them, you have to get used to them kind of buzzing in your fingers. And let's do last year's. So I'm holding him by his thorax, not by his abdomen and not by his head. And I'm going to mark his thorax. Now, a drone's thorax is usually really fuzzy. There's my red mark. And I can let him go. And now when I see him, I'll go, oh, there's my queen, and I'm going to have to look twice. And I'm going to go, no, that's not my queen. But that's really what it takes to mark a queen. Go down one more box and see if we can find the queen. Normally, at this point, I've seen eggs, I've seen larvae. My pattern looks good. I've seen the eggs, the larvae was wet and white. I'm seeing nectar, I'm seeing pollen. I've seen everything I really need to see at this point. And normally I would just put this hive back together. I'm gonna grab a frame that's a brood frame like this one. I would prefer one that's open brood, but there's not a ton of open brood, right? I've got a ton of cap brood, but very little open brood. Why would that be? Other than it's been cold. And so they've pulled back that queen from laying because it's been so cold. So she laid this up when it was warm, and now it's cold and she's just laying tiny bits. So we're gonna do an alcohol wash. Can somebody fill that? Just pour, this is just soapy water. Fill that with this, just about halfway. And if you slop, it's okay. It's Dawn dish soap. It's not gonna hurt anything. Perfect. This is not that hard to do, people. The bees are gonna fly when I do this. Okay, I'm gonna kind of push these back together. And just to kind of keep the bees from getting too irate with me, I'm gonna kind of put these back together too. Now after I did that, I know where my queen's at, right? She was over here in this other box. Any of the older bees have flown off. They're up and flying. These are mostly young nurse bees, which is where the mites are gonna be. And this looks cruel, but it's not that big a deal. Half a cup of bees. Okay. The rest of these can go back in the hive. If you shake it this way, it's going to get really sudsy. So the best way to do it is swirl it. And usually what I do is I swirl it for a minute, and then I set it down, go put my hive back together. Okay, yep, queen excluder.
Are any of these directional? I know some of them have different
No.
weird angles on them.
And the only reason I leave this flap like this is because my lids have an upper entrance. And if I close that off, they can't use the entrance, right? And now if there's any drones in here, they won't fit through the queen excluder and they'll get trapped in the box and they'll just die. And you'll come back in the next time and you'll have all these drones trying to get down through, dead drones that tried to get down through the queen excluder and they can't. So I just fold that back, set it like that. We're done with that hive. Now I can look at the bottom, and I believe I may have one mite there. There's one dot in there that's kind of got a little bit of a red tint to it, and it's mostly round. And you can see there's my one mite in that alcohol wash.
You can see legs.
If you can see legs, you've got better eyes than I do.
I kind of can actually.
Yeah, your eyes are way better than mine.
So is that a good sign to just have one?
So I only have one. Okay, so the typical equation is take however many mites you found, divide that by 3, because roughly a half a cup of bees is 300 bees. So to get a percentage, if we divide that by 3, now I get a true percentage of how many bees. So 1 divided by 3, so my infestation rate is like 0.3, right? 0.33. So pretty good. I don't like to see mites at this time of year, so I'm not concerned at this point. I washed one, probably fine. It'll probably be fine the rest of the summer, but I'm going to wash that same hive again in a month and see what it's doing. Because if it's still 1 in a month, then I'm like, okay, they're keeping mites under control, everything's probably okay. But in a month, if it's now up to 3%, so I'm washing like 9 mites or 10 mites in there, then I'm going to go, oh, wait a minute, the mites are, their population's growing quickly. Now I'm going to do something about it. Right now I've got to take care of it before it gets out of control. Your threshold is that 3% range. That would mean you would wash 9 mites in your wash, divide that by 3. Now you're at 3%. That gives you your percentage. If you just treat and you never come back and do a mite wash, you never know what did my treatment work? Do I still have mites or do I not? I've yet to ever catch a swarm. Honestly, since I've been doing bees for 10 years, I've seen 2 swarms. One was in my own yard, and it was about that big. And the other one was another beekeeper. She was in her 2nd year. Her bees overwintered really well and swarmed on her. And they flew down about 50 feet from the hives and landed on a pole fence. And she went, help, I don't know what to do. And I just went out there and scooped them back into another box. And I handed them back to her and said, here you go. And she stuck them over there by the other box and away she went. So what did you end up doing?
Well, I think it was multiple swarms in one. It was huge. It was massive.
Which is common.
Yeah.
If a hive swarms and goes into that swarm mode, they'll build multiple swarm cells on the bottom of the frames. The original queen leaves with the first swarm, and then sometimes you'll have that virgin emerge, or you'll have 2 or 3 virgins emerge all within the same time. And sometimes the theory is, well, the first virgin out wins, right? And she goes around and kills all her sisters. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the bees will kind of cordon them off and keep them separate. And they'll say, oh, we still need to swarm. And now they'll swarm again, and all of a sudden all those virgins leave together with the swarm. And so now you get this clump of bees on a tree, and you might have a clump here and another clump up a little higher. There's probably 2 queens in there. there's usually way more signs that have happened long before that ever happened, and you just missed them.
Yeah.
Which is
And we were just
which is
coming out of
normal.
winter, you know, and so it was like, oh, this is.
It was
fine.
way early. You said you sent me that email, or did you call me?
I think it was both. I think I freaked out.
And I'm like, already? Really?
Are you sure?
Are you? I'm like, well, if she's got bees on a fence, I'm pretty sure that's what that is. But it was a tad early, but we had that warm spell, and
Yeah. My husband and I were like, oh, you know, they could use some more room. And we were about to add a box. Like, oh, okay.
unfortunately, that box needed to go on about 3 weeks
Right.
sooner.
Exactly.
It was a good morning. It's fun for me to sit down and talk bees with somebody. I don't think my students realize that if you get me talking bees, I'll talk forever. If you keep asking me questions, I'm going to keep giving you answers. Not that I have all the answers, but I'll give you my opinion, and you can sort out whether it's valuable or not. Had a good morning, and appreciate those guys for coming and listen to me ramble on about bees. Sometimes I just go and go, but it's all fun. I'm hoping we have a little better bee season than we've started out this year. Started out looking like it was going to be really good, and now I'm wondering if we're going to get much honey at all, but we'll see. Hope your season is doing a little better than mine. Have a great day.